My name is Tarmack, and this is your Game Industry News Wrap-Up for the Ubisoft E3 2016 press conference. Follow me on twitter.com/gnomecast for more game news and insight. The Ubisoft press conference began with this drug-inspired mess. I have no idea why there is a dancing giraffe, and while this was one of the more amazing and crazy intros to a press event I've ever seen, it does rather squarely indicate that I am not part of the target demographic for Just Dance 2017. Up next was Ghost Recon Wildlands, which I'll admit looks pretty good from a graphical standpoint, but also when considering mobility. It's a third-person modern military shooter with stealth elements, drones, and vehicles. Here's my issue though. Ubisoft has always been good at making these games look more exciting than they really are. At this point though, Ghost Recon games are so genericized, and the tactics that used to be in these games is completely gone, which is a disappointment. This presentation involved significant camera cuts, fake player commentary, with such lines as this, which no multiplayer group has ever spoken.
And we are clear, gentlemen.
Nice work.
That was a tough mission. Oh man, that was close.
Okay, for this next one, I have to show you a piece of the reveal because the context is amazing.
Taken. The question becomes, who will take them?
Let me just say that South Park, The Fractured But Whole, looks great. You play as the new kid who has moved into South Park, and the other little kids are engaged in a sort of civil war to create their own superhero money-making franchise. I find these games refreshing for the same reason I find Overwatch refreshing. We've had years and years and years of games taking themselves far too seriously, like Tom Clancy, Ghost Recon Wildlands, for example. And games that indulge in the fact that we all still have that little kid inside that loves gaming are like a breath of fresh air. Also, the amount of F-bombs dropped during the South Park section of the press event was quite enjoyable and really showcases how not American Ubisoft is. From a game that takes itself far too seriously to one that doesn't, we're back into another game that does. Because what year would be complete without two Tom Clancy titles? The Division is getting an expansion called The Underground, which from all descriptions is effectively a random quest and dungeon generator. The intent is for it to be different every time. They also discussed a future expansion called Survival, which, you guessed it, is a supply management survival style being added to the game and is apparently also having weather effects, because that matters. We got to see some interesting VR work via a PvP demo of a game called Eagle Flight. Ubisoft brought Palmer Luckey out on stage to be part of the showcase. He must just be getting virtual haircuts done these days. The Eagle Flight game is a capture the flag team game where you need to grab a dead rabbit and get it back to your nest, all the while other eagles are chasing and shooting death rays at you. It's a neat concept with a lot of terrain movement and speed. Also on the VR front, we got to see a heavily edited bit of play by a few members of the various Star Trek cast using the Star Trek Bridge Crew VR game. LeVar Burton, Carl Urban, and Jerry Ryan put on an Oculus Rift each and got to see what VR looks like by being a part of the bridge crew of a Star Trek ship. Now, as a former Next Generation fan, and reading Rainbow to be perfectly frank, seeing how excited LeVar got talking about this game was great to see. It isn't as graphically amazing as some others, and the various stations looked like they were really simple to operate, so it's probably much more of a social game than a complex one, but that still got me excited. I like Vikings, so seeing the gameplay trailer for the game For Honor, which essentially looks like a much more polished Norse version of Dynasty Warriors, kinda got me going a bit. Vikings with their battle axes fighting against samurai with their katanas. I have to admit that the combat did look a little bit slower than I would like. The game is slated for release on Valentine's Day 2017. Next up was a section with a few things that I wanted to touch on but not spend much time discussing. The robot Bud from Grow Home is back in a game called Grow Up. Clever or something. We've also got another super amazing surprise release by the crew that made Blood Dragon. It's a mashup of Trials and Blood Dragon called Trials of the Blood Dragon, and it was released right after it was announced. Let's just say that I've not heard good things so far. And they had the Assassin's Creed movie producer on to talk about the movie, but I didn't actually watch that bit as I needed to take a quick break and the idea of that movie bores me. This was followed up by a pretty decent presentation of Watch Dogs 2. Now, I'm really cautious about most things Ubisoft because of how atrocious they were regarding the Watch Dogs downgrade. It was such a stark and obvious sham, so this time around, I'm skeptical. However, I need to say it, the video footage they showed looked much more like how the game is actually likely to look. It wasn't some super crazy high-res effects everywhere pre-rendered piece. It actually looked like game footage and didn't make me think that it looked too good to be true. So, that's a start. The game has a much more interesting protagonist this time around, an up-and-coming hacker who has even more tools than last, including a drone and a remote-controlled car. The game also has a much more convincing parkour system and Lululemon pants so that you two can hit on ladies, parkour away, and then hit people with copyright claims for no reason. And finally, we heard from Yves Guillemot about a new IP. I don't like heights, so I've got very little to say about this one. It represents a mountain range in Europe and includes squirrel suits, snowboards, paragliding, and skis in what seems to be a pretty open-world game. I'm sure for those interested in snow sports, it'll be a lot of fun, and even though it's not my thing, I'll still review it if they send me code. The game is called Steep. This has been your Game Industry News Wrap-Up for the Ubisoft E3 2016 press conference. You can follow me for more news and game chatter on twitter.com/gnomecast. I'm Tarmack. Thanks for watching.